Welcome to the STEM Confidence Podcast, where we talk about how to turn your data into powerful insights. Hello and welcome to another episode of the STEM Confidence Podcast. Today we are talking about data storytelling, a method that allows you to explain your data within a narrative that has a context. We are going to explore what data storytelling is, why it is important to create stories with your data, and how to do it in a way that is beneficial both for you and for the people who are listening to your talk or reading your paper or report. So first, I want to start by explaining what data storytelling is. It is basically a technique in which you craft a story around the data you're explaining to make it more understandable and approachable. The reason why we do so is because data is often very overwhelming to explain and to understand. So by creating a storyline, it is easier to break it down and make it more understandable to a wider audience. To get a clear idea about this method, let's go over some of the main components. So as any storytelling, data storytelling consists of three main elements. First, the setup or the setting, which refers to the context of your problem. Secondly, the conflict, which would be similar to a statement of the problem. And third, the resolution, which is the part in which you explain the solution of the presented problem. In this episode, I want to analyze each one of the elements of storytelling and see how you can apply it in your presentations and reports. So the first element is the context. This is the part in which your main task is to involve the audience. Try to answer questions that are likely on their mind, which are, for example, why should I even pay attention to this? Try to frame your story in a way that resonates with the problems of your audience so that they immediately have a stake in the solution. The second element is the conflict, and here is where you elaborate your point. You have to further develop the situation or the problem, incorporate external context if needed, discuss, for example, some potential solution to address the given problem, and illustrate the benefits of finding the optimal solution. By expanding on the conflict in this way, you create a more compelling and persuasive data story. Your audience is not only informed about the problem, but it is also guided toward understanding the potential solutions and all the positive impact that can result from addressing this conflict. Specifically in this point, it is a great idea to use charts, graphs, or any other visuals to make your examples more tangible and also more relatable to your audience. And finally, the third step is the resolution. After you already explain the context and the conflict, you can express your resolution, which is basically the solution of your problem. To wrap up, you can think about recapping the problem and resolve the need for answers that you created while explaining the conflict. Also, in this part, it is very important to explain why your solutions fit perfectly in the presented conflict. Okay, so this basically was the first part that covered the three main elements of data storytelling. But I would really want to get into some other points that are going to help you with the narrative structure itself. And these points are first, cohesiveness, second, the power of repetition and how to use it in your favor, and third, how to ensure that your story is clear. So first, starting with cohesiveness. So even though you explain the entire context conflict resolution thing, your slide, your figure, and you all have to point in the same direction. This is especially true, for example, for very complex figures. There are usually many ways to interpret them, and often it helps to put the conclusion directly in the figure title. All of this really ensures that your entire presentation or report is cohesive. And to avoid any further confusion, you should guide your audience to the figure step by step, attempting to align each part with the corresponding phase of your narrative. To add more cohesiveness in your narrative, you should consider using annotations, callouts, or animations to highlight specific aspects as you are discussing them. All of that helps in directing the audience's attention to the relevant details. And remember that data without context is meaningless. Secondly, I would like to discuss the power of repetition. If you think about a story that you were told maybe in your childhood, you will probably be able to remember it even though you haven't heard it in years. It is very likely that you are able to remember it because it was repeated to you multiple times. Similarly, your audience will remember the points that you repeat. And this is why it is very important to constantly emphasize your main point. First, by introducing it, then by discussing it, and finally by summarizing once again why it is necessary for your resolution. And finally, let's talk about the tactics you can employ to ensure that your story is clear. One that I like very much, and I use it whether I'm writing a report or preparing some slides, is asking myself the following question. So what? Whenever I'm about to edit a sentence, I ask myself, so what? Whenever I add more elements to a slide, I ask myself again, so what? You will find that more often than not, we add new words or slide elements just for the sake of adding. So make sure that everything in your presentation or report has a purpose. Otherwise, remove it because the only thing that it will add is friction, and we don't need any more friction between your data and your audience. Another very important point that I believe it is often overlooked and it can improve significantly the clarity of your presentation is giving examples. Examples humanize your data, and it is crucial to make your data as accessible as possible because people relate and remember the messages throughout a story. And examples are often the best way to make a story relatable. In wrapping up this episode on data storytelling, we have explored crafting narratives around data, emphasizing three key elements: context, conflict, and resolution. Remember that cohesiveness is crucial for complex data. So always aim to align your step-by-step interpretations to your resolution. When you choose your key messages, make sure that you repeat them throughout your presentation. Repetition reinforces your key points, and clarity is maintained by constantly incorporating relatable examples. And finally, as you embark on your next presentation, on your next report or paper, try to remember these storytelling tactics to make your information not only informative, but also memorable. Thank you for listening, and keep telling those data stories. Until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you are ready to elevate your communication skills and transform your data into valuable insights, schedule a free discovery call on the link in the description.